Welcome to The Attention Shift, a podcast where sports media gets debated like a VAR decision. Passionately, chaotically, and with none of us fully agreeing on the outcome, right?
Okay, so we're here with the Attention Shift podcast, special edition tonight, the Solution Series event in Mayfair, London. The Solution Series event tonight has brought together a group of sports media execs who've been set a number of different challenges to ultimately try and answer, how do you identify the anonymous fan? I'm joined tonight by co-conspirators Lee and Joe from the Attention Shift podcast and Harry Hesp from Bowler League. Thanks for joining us, Harry.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
So to kick off, and please be gentle, what did you think of the Solution Series?
Well, look, I mean, first and foremost, I really felt like I used my brain, which was, it's a lot to be said compared to other events I have been to. And that's not throwing any shade at anyone, but
other events are available.
The other events are available. But I felt it was compelling and it was fast moving. It was really, really interesting for me to link up with people that I wouldn't necessarily share these ideas with, and especially if we're looking to push fans down a certain funnel, to engage with, i.e. cricket, which is far more traditional sport than Bowler League, which is less than 2 years old. It was fascinating for me to discuss with people in the industry how we approach these different challenges that you guys set. So,
what were the main points of commonality that came up when you were chatting? Because you're addressing a similar problem, but you're coming at it from different angles.
Yeah. And I think that was what I was surprised about, is that the challenge is obviously the same, but the approach is really similar, right? So...
is it the channels that are different though? Is it like, was it when you say the approach is similar, is it like you're obviously YouTube, Twitch first, and cricket has more of a legacy approach maybe to...
Exactly, but we're all trying to get to the same data point, right? So YouTube gives you X data that's really valuable that you can take to partners and showcase. And then we all really want to know more about that fandom and more about that certain demographic that we're really trying to tap into. And the challenge is the same, right? Traditional sport, challenger sport, it's the same challenge. How you go about it is slightly different, and how you kind of circle around and circumvent that kind of data you get from the platforms versus that, I was talking to the guys from Wisdom, and they were talking about their Patreon channel and how successful that's been, and that's not something that we're looking at the moment, but it's totally understandable that they are, right? So it was fascinating to come at a similar challenge in a kind of really different way, but try and end up at the same goal.
And what for you is the key? Is it the quality of that data? Whether you're an ECB or you're a Wisden or you're Bowler League, what's the thing that's really going to move the needle for you? Is it the amount of data? Is it the fact that it's not joined up or it's not connected? What is this anonymous fan problem, and how do we start joining things together?
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate challenge we all face, right? Because I think at the start of your night here, we get a hypothetical situation that there was over 1 million in revenue being missed out by the I've forgotten their name, London Lightning.
London Lightning.
And how do we claw that back? And if you look at the in-depth data you can extract from a fan nowadays, getting there is a really, really difficult path, right? Because it's, the trust levels and if you're approaching it from a sport that's been played for 200 years versus a sport that's been played for 2 years, how are you bridging that gap? Are you utilizing the personalities that we've got involved, because they've already have very trusted audiences that follow them?
What is that metric then that drive, like obviously I guess you're a commercial business like all businesses are. Ultimately, you're trying to get more sponsorship or media revenue or revenues, as you said, you're a new league. Is there key metrics that you take to advertisers, sponsors, that you really think you can harness now? And then is there some that you feel like, if I had this, that would answer some of that question?
Yeah, I think one of the key metrics that we can boast at the moment is our audience demographic and the amount of viewers that we're driving for the under 34s, right? We're really captivating in their millions the under 34 audience, and that's evident with every match day we play. And evident, if you came down to Baller League in season 1, you could see the amount of people wearing Angry Gin shirts and really supporting United. And it's evident that demographic is really important to us, and it's important that we then showcase that, right? Because that is ultimately a demographic that a lot of brands are chasing and want to engage.
So how did you apply what you know in this situation here, when you've got rights holders that don't work and aren't distributed in the way that you do it?
There was a couple of the challenges that really resonated with me, and that we face as a new business, which is, how do you push the millions of fans that you're attracting down the funnel to become loyal and retention? You know, we've got very, very strong retention rate with our viewership that we get from the platform. But then how do you convert into that loyal fan base that's going to stick around for decades?
Is that something that you can learn?
Absolutely. 100%. And that was what I found really interesting, was their approach to those graduated audiences that they've had for decades, and how they're still retaining them, how they're still keeping their interest, and how they can face one of your chaos cards, for example.
I think they're cutting the budget in half. I was like, oh, okay, like, you know, when you're a startup, that's like perfectly normal, right? But it was interesting throwing those chaos cards in when we had the different scenarios as well, and some got some more gentle ones than others. Like one I threw in, it was basically like, your rivals come up with the same idea as you, what you're going to do, and the answer I got back, which I knew I would get, was, oh yeah, I was a better ideas anyway. Okay.
We got there first.
Yeah, we got there first kind of thing. But it is interesting, because these are, look, yeah, we've made those things up, but there are real life things that happen. Right? There's always something, especially when you work in the world of live, that's going to pop up and catch you when you least expect it.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of the fans that you know, I mean, obviously, Baller League, I went to season 1 in the UK, we just finished season 2. How have you seen that evolve across those seasons? And of course, you've got the US launching, which is a different market in and of itself. How are you looking at the data and how you know those fans? How are you evolving those? Are you looking to, is it a completely new fan that you're looking to reach in the US, or are you going to try and migrate some across?
Well, you know, I can see that some of our audience demographic has shown interest from the US naturally in some of our. KSI is the president of the league, right? He's got and Speed has come over and been part of our league as well. And there's a natural crossover between those two audiences. So, you know, we look to take advantage of that, for sure.
Is it because of World Cup year help as well?
World Cup year is
by
design, you know?
Exactly, yeah. That's what I was trying to...
There's a natural interest, growing interest in the sport of football in the US. But, you know, Baller League is small-sided football. Small-sided football is the most played game on the planet.
So every
Also,
kid
it's
plays
like professional teams at a youth level. I know, like, and Man United pioneered this well in youth football. Small-sided games, ultimately, how they've honed skills of players. So actually, it happens from a grassroots level. So obviously, when you graduate, you then go to 11-a-side.
It does. I mean, you know, we've all played more small-sided football than 11-sided football, right?
Every kid in the playground plays it, right?
Exactly,
That's cool, right?
yeah.
That's what
and we had loads of Premier League players come down to Baller League these last 2 seasons. And I remember at Langer, for example, sat there and said, this is the football that I played growing up. This is the football I love. I love the physicality of it. I love the speed of it. Your touch has to be spot on. And, you know, it's
honest football, isn't it?
It's honest football. It's exciting football. It's fast-paced. It's insanely high skill, and you know, a bunch of our players were in Premier League academies, right? But perhaps they suited the small-sided game way more than they did the 11-sided. It's a totally different game. But it's one that's very exciting and clearly attracts a big audience, and we're not surprised because it's the most played game on the planet.
Is there anything you're going to take away tonight with you that makes you think about something a little bit differently when you go to work tomorrow, a slightly different viewpoint or a perspective?
Definitely, and that's testament to the team that I was on and the way that they were approaching the challenges of fandom and how you bridge that gap between being an anonymous fan to being a known fan, and what does that look like? What's that data point that switches that when do you become a known fan from an anonymous fan?
And then what do you do with them when you know them?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's got to be another onward journey from that.
Exactly.
It's not enough just to know them. That's not the end point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting.
Cool.
Well, thank you for
thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I did.
From the buzz, I think everybody's quite engaged.
Yeah.
We've got our second guest now who's attended the Solutions Series event tonight, and we've got Naveed. Hi, Naveed.
Hi,
Welcome.
Jack.
Tell us a little bit about what you do and who you were sat with tonight.
So I was sat with a really diverse group. There was people from the media, the content side of things, and rights holders. So we had, a couple of different rights holders, Formula One, Super Try, and then I'm from broadcast background, and you've got Wisdom as well. So you kind of cover most bases there.
And so what was the challenge when you were talking about the fictional team, London Lightning, and you were looking at fans and how you gather those fans and how you get to know them and how you join all of that data together? What came up?
The strength of it all was that we all came from different directions. That was also the challenge, I guess, because everyone's got a different priority. So once you originally you come into it from your kind of background, and then you get the idea and the sense of the thinking of how others come from the problem. That from my background, you deal with rights holders, you understand what they want. But with this, you actually understood their thinking processes, perhaps, because you were in that meeting before they come to, say, a broadcaster, and similarly to a digital organisation.
So you come from a Sky horse racing background, working on the broadcast side. What perspective did that give you, and what was interesting from that perspective compared to the rights holder like Formula One and Super Try?
The funny thing about rights holders now, in horse racing television, the rights holders and the broadcasters are often in the same, there's joint ventures, they come together as a partnership. And that is probably one of the models that will work for niche sports going forward. Now, that's something which with a real
almost like invested in the growth each other because it's a joint venture rather than that. Almost like that arm's length relationship that, yes, I'm taking the content, but I'm not necessarily got any ownership in the content.
Yeah, because the premium rights, your footballs and your Premier Leagues and all the rest of it and your cricket, that will probably all... That model will rumble on, but what about the ones that sit below that?
Yeah.
So, coming at it from that perspective, but then, we have Formula One, another premium right on our table as well. So it kind of comes to this situation whereby how does it work for you?
Yeah.
And that was what really was interesting, in terms of your fans, but you can all learn from each other how you get there.
I'm interested in what you said about this new model going forward, this kind of joint venture approach, because historically, just a straight broadcast relationship, there wouldn't be much sharing of that data. So you wouldn't really know about the fans. But actually, if broadcaster and rights holder are much closer, in theory, is there more information shared?
Yeah, in theory. But that's where I think it probably has to go, because there's so many sports, there's so many access points, so many distribution models. Well, how are you going to stand out?
We're seeing a lot more with the Apple F1 deal, ESPN buying a stake in NFL. You are, if you don't own a stake in the sport that you're trying to promote, then, where's that value in that relationship? And I guess it was interesting, F1 is obviously, I guess, a much more bigger name than Super Try. Obviously, you come from a different perspective. Where was there some different thinking that you go, actually, that you said you approached it from different angles? What was the one that stood out to you? Was there something you went, I didn't expect that from you?
There were a couple of questions we struggled with, and some of them we nailed it really quickly. Yeah. And I think it's when it became kind of more, and again, this is possibly all of our backgrounds, media rights, or it was all quite media focused. When it became more of an in-person and event-based thing, that was where maybe, but that was just with the backgrounds. That was where maybe there wasn't the bridge that we had with some of the other events.
So obviously, tonight we set up what the subject matter was and the fictitious team. But if you could choose a problem to solve in the next Solution Series, what would you choose?
I think one of the things is, look, broadcast's always been a really wide funnel. You're selling kind of, the moment, the thrill of the live. That's always been the traditional route. So therefore, that's a collective experience, and we'll still generally.
It will still reach a certain audience. Yeah, absolutely.
But it would be good to know your cohorts. Who are these people? Or get more data on them. And then obviously, when you're in social media or you're in digital or you're an organisation, they will go more specifically towards those cohorts. But for us, you'd still want to know who are the cohorts who make up your collective.
And just coming back to what you were saying there about the JV as well, and this sort of struck me a little bit, because obviously we've been talking about anonymous fan here and the anonymous fan index. And I guess at the moment, when you have that relationship where ultimately broadcaster takes content and ultimately that is the thing, but I guess if you're working in JV where understanding who the fan is was beneficial to both parties, I guess then the content we produced in a different way than the acquisition was brought into it, rather than it just almost be like broadcast out. Do you think, is that where you're coming from when you talk about that, almost like that JV experience? Because that conversion then essentially has a value to it?
Well, yeah, before I've worked for plenty of others who might have a much more traditional outlook with the rights holders. But I think generally that is the feeling, isn't it? Whereby, well, okay, that is going to be a new model that sits underneath. That might not be the premium model, it might not be the one that gets all the column inches, but this is something which has to happen really, otherwise how does it punch above its weight? If you don't do something like that, then what's your future? What's the alternative?
And I think this multi-distribution, multi-platform distribution, whether it's your own brand or whether you're Sky and you're activating on YouTube or you're partnering, like the BBC's partnered with YouTube, I think really that is the only way that understanding those fans who are fluid and who live their sports media lives across all of those platforms, we're only going to get to that stage where we know those fans if we do collaborate. And I think that JV is a really interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, I think collaboration is a huge thing, not only the JVs, but then, other related partners.
Yeah.
So, it might be wagering in horse racing, or it might be, your digital partner in another sport or what have you. And it's almost that sharing of information.
Are you finding a lot more of that now? Are you, like, outside of this, in your experience, are you finding that because everyone knows rights deals are going down and the TV money's not there, and there's, all the challenges that we talk about all the time about, attention and declining TV audiences, in your conversations that you're having at the moment in your business, what's sticking out for you? And did you see those challenges kind of translate here, or was it kind of separate? Is there something that you didn't see get talked about today that you see quite commonly?
As rights holders are becoming more savvy, and they've been savvy for a while, but they're becoming savvier, and there's more crossover between.
You see a lot more like non-exclusive deals now, where ultimately, yes, it will go on a broadcast channel, but also they'll take it wherever they take it next, which might be on their own digital channels, or it might be distributed by creators. There's a mixture and a multitude of ways of doing it now, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the outcome for anyone? What are they really after on the end of all of this? And then, therefore, they'll work towards that solution. It can be a mixed model, or it can be new models coming forward. I think in the report it said that people tend to be further towards a kind of pay-for-play with a small percentage of free content, or the other way, but there's very little in the middle. Maybe the middle is an opportunity, I don't know. But I think now people will be trying all sorts, really. Like I said, but that's for the one sitting underneath. You've got that top tier and the rest.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's a binary model, like it's a black and white, where it's like you have to do this or this. And if you're a new challenger league, you have to be on YouTube, you have to do this. Or if you're a legacy one, you just stick to broadcast and maximize all your revenue. But I think you're right, there's a grey area where you need to do both. You just need to cater for, like you said, those different segments and those different audiences across the board.
And people will be trying different things, because the same thing won't work for everyone. Everyone's got a different profile, older audiences or younger ones.
So final question then. So do you feel like you got out your comfort zone with this format tonight in the way that we've done it? And do you feel like, did it challenge your assumptions in any way in terms of how you would normally have thought about a situation like this?
Definitely. I think every single one of our table, they would have had, some of them we agreed on, or you agreed with, but maybe 4 of the 6 and 2 of the others I would have done differently, they would have done differently, and so on. And that's the really good thing about it, it's the thinking processes. You meet rights holders, or they meet broadcasters, or they meet, media organisations, but you just get to think of, that was the first thing they mentioned, and that was the second thing they mentioned, that was the third thing they mentioned. I'd have done it the other way, or mentioned something else. So that was really, that was really educational.
Thank you so much for your time, Naveed. Really appreciate being here tonight.
And thank you, everyone, as always. We have been the Attention Shift, out and about, enjoying ourselves for a change. Live and in person. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you have any questions or any abuse that you would like to send us, send it to me at hello@attentionshift.media. That's hello@attentionshift.media. Thank you. Cheers, guys.
That's it for this episode of The Attention Shift. Remember to like and subscribe and listen to us next time. And do let us know what you think. Email us at hello@attentionshift.media. That's hello@attentionshift.media. Goodbye.